Hey everyone, welcome back to the Fantasy Pros Football Podcast. I'm Bobby Sylvester with Mike Tagliere as always, and you can follow us on Twitter at BobbyFantasyPro and at Mike Tagliere NFL. Tags, what's going on, buddy?
Nothing, man. I woke up and it was a weird morning because Eminem, obviously the rapper, he came out with a new album. He didn't do any promo, nothing. Like literally just dropped it at midnight last night, and apparently it was number 1 on iTunes after 30 minutes. So that's pretty crazy promotion, like whatever they did, but it's the talk of Twitter today, and it's really good. You should listen to it.
I wish George Strait would do that, man.
Oh God, stop. No.
Our guest today is Sigmund Bloom of Footballguys.com. He's on Twitter at his name, Sigmund Bloom. Sig, thanks for coming on the show.
Oh, it's good to be here. And I think we're all just ready to stop reacting to things and guessing and having the big reveal as we've speculated so much, and it's time to make it real.
Next Sunday is going to be, I guess the next Sunday is in like 2 days, but the one after that, it's just going to be so much fun because we're suddenly going to understand everything.
Yeah, not to go off on a tangent, but this is the second challenge for fantasy football players after your draft and prepping for your draft is what I call it is being open to the new reality, and sticking to your guns can really work out for you. But more often, I think accepting that you were wrong when reality shows you were wrong. The people that are most flexible and open to doing that do the best in their fantasy leagues. Exactly.
Yeah, the most principled guy to that respect tends to do the best, and that's something I struggled with when I first started playing fantasy football, is just being like, man, well, Alshon Jeffrey, I drafted him in the second round, and he's, they keep saying he's going to play, but he's just hurt, and he's, terrible. I've run into that enough times to know that you can't do that, so yeah, just accept the new reality. Guys, before we begin, I want to remind you all that we have a signed David Johnson jersey we're giving away from pristineauction.com, and this is your last chance to submit an entry for this jersey because we're choosing a winner this weekend. If you want to crack at the jersey, you can quickly submit an entry by going to fantasypros.com/contest, and while you're at it, say thanks to Pristine Auction for putting this on by checking out their site, seeing what they have for you. I promise there's something for every football fan because they've got hundreds of lots that end daily, and everything is guaranteed authentic from only the most trusted sources. You're not going to believe how affordable a lot of this is too. Every day there's like a handful of ridiculous values, and if you're paying attention, you'll be able to find one. Like yesterday I saw a Joe Montana Fighting Irish jersey signed for $105. A Le'Veon Bell signed Steelers helmet for just $67, which is bonkers. If you get something from Pristine Auction, please be sure to let them know Fantasy Pros sent you their way. That way they keep doing these giveaways for our listeners. Again, that's Pristine Auction, Pristine. Okay, guys, so here's what we have planned for today's show. We're going to start out by going round table and each sharing a few of our top late round targets. As Sigmund said before the show, he's got like 73 of them lined up. So we'll try to get through, as many as we can. Then we're going to talk about week 1 quarterback streamers, defenses, and kickers, because whether or not you want it in your league, the majority of listeners are going to be playing with them, and getting the right ones actually can make a difference. So we do need to cover it. First, though, we've got some news to talk about. I don't want to give it too much time because the show, like I said, is jam-packed, but let's start with Royce Freeman sitting out last night. Sig, do you think that this means that he's going to at least split the carries or maybe be the starter?
He'll definitely split the carries. It sounds like Devontae Booker will be the starter, and the question is this a ceremonial start like Jeremy Hill at the beginning of the year last year, or is this a sign of a real committee? And I'm afraid that there's tons of signs that Denver, John Elway, has a fascination with Devontae Booker. It's just one of those things where, it's like Ryan Riddle would say, first rounders have to prove that they can't play, and late rounders have to prove, like D'Angelo Henderson in this case, has to prove that he can play. And I believe there was talk after the draft that they took Booker, that they had Booker as the number 2 running back on their board. So they see Booker as a first rounder. They're going to keep treating him that way. It could resolve itself based on talent, ability, that Royce Freeman by week 4, week 5, week 6 is dominating the backfield in touches and makes people look smart for drafting him in the, I think, 4th round. So we have to get him now. But just be warned in that first week. And Seattle has a pretty good run defense too. So in that first week, it might be a little rough going.
No, I mean, well, I said on the podcast yesterday that I had given up on the Broncos' competency if they weren't going to start Devontae Booker over Royce Freeman. So, I mean, that's where I was at. And to know that they rested him last night, maybe there was enough feedback from, I don't know who they would actually listen to among the community. I don't think they're listening to the podcast and being like, well, Mike said we're going to be dumb.
Well,
if we
Broncos fans
Freeman.
were going nuts, man. And
yeah,
Broncos fans are like savages.
There was nothing else that Royce Freeman could have done. I know Brad Evans was really upset about it as well, and he's obviously in Denver, and he had been hearing that Royce Freeman basically had the job locked up. So I don't know what happened there. There was obviously a disconnect. So to see him sit, it's restoring some of my faith in that coaching staff, but it's still not great because I think Devontae Booker, honestly, I felt like he should have been closer to being cut than being a starter.
I thought so as well. We also probably should talk about Ronald Jones. We've mentioned him a few times here, but man, Sig, he was terrible again.
Yeah, the team is saying that, well, we've seen it in practice, but not in games. Some of it's blocking, other breakdowns. But obviously, Peyton Barber is going to be the guy going into the season. This is still going to be a three-headed backfield. This still is a team that is not good at running the ball. So week 1 at New Orleans, week 2, week 3 with Ryan Fitzpatrick. And then meanwhile, too, you have the GM saying we're not committing that Jameis Winston is definitely the guy in week 4 when he comes back. So maybe the answer here is just to fade Tampa's offense in general. But all of these rookie running backs, I think only Freeman has gained value in the preseason, and even he has a cloudy value. So it's after rookies helped us win our league last year, at least not necessarily going to help us win in week 1.
All right, finally, I guess we got to talk about Terrell Pryor. He's starting, Tags.
Yeah, I know he's starting. I really thought that him or Jermaine Kearse was going to get cut. Like Jermaine Kearse could have been cut with no cap hit, which kind of made sense. Like after they signed Pryor, I'm like, what are they going to do with him? And now he's had an abdominal surgery that's going to keep him out for at least week 1. So Terrell Pryor's a starter. I mean, I'm not drafting him. I don't think. I mean, the thing is just like he's a guy who suffered another foot injury this offseason. He obviously said that if it affected him, and I'm putting that in quotes last year, that it affected him as a wide receiver. So then he came out this offseason and said that he suffered another one that he had to have surgery on. His coach is telling him to shut up. I don't know, man. I want no part of Terrell Pryor. I think that Robbie Anderson and Quincy Enunwa are
You don't think there's some ceiling here?
I mean, he's 6'5", like 230-something pounds. He's a crazy athlete, so I won't say that there's no ceiling, but I'm not going to use a draft pick on him.
I mean, like, okay, be real. Would you rather take him or someone like Deshaun Jackson, Ted Ginn? You know what I mean?
Jackson.
Deshaun Jackson, really?
I would. He's a better football player.
Yeah, but he's not starting.
Well, he is going to start in 3 wide receiver sets, which they're going to be in.
Yeah, that's not enough, man. You got Mike Evans, you got Chris Godwin, Cameron Bray, O.J. Howard.
But do we know, Sig, do we know that Chris Godwin is going to start in 2 wide receiver sets? Because the depth chart for the Bucs still says Deshaun Jackson. I'm not saying that Godwin won't, but I think that nobody knows for sure.
Well, look, there's going to be, I would say you look at the Tampa pass offense this way. You have tier 1, which is Mike Evans. But the fact that we have this tier of 5 different targets on tier 2 limits Evans' upside. And on any given week, you've got Adam Humphries, Chris Godwin, Deshaun Jackson, O.J. Howard, Cameron Brate. These are all quality pass catchers who all play different roles. And ideally, you'd want this to be like the Rams or hopefully what we see with the Bears or the Titans, some of these forward-looking offensive teams where depending on the matchup, we could try to project, this is going to be a Deshaun Jackson week because it's a slow secondary, or this is going to be a Cameron Brate or O.J. Howard week because of the tight end matchup. But it's Dirk Cutter. So I don't even know if we can trust rational matchup playing, but what's an embarrassment of riches for the Bucs passing game is going to make it super frustrating. So Godwin, Humphries, Jackson, Howard, Brate, they're all going to play a role. It may fluctuate week to week, and it's going to be very unpredictable.
Okay, guys, let's move on to our late round draft picks. And like I said, we're going to do this round table, so we'll just go in order. Tags, we're going to let you start, and then Sig, and then myself, and we'll just keep going around until we've gone long enough to move into the next segment. So maybe 3 or 4 players each that are the most important to target. I mean, you can rattle off extra names too, but we'll break down really 3 or 4 each. Tags, who's your first guy?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm going to try and go with some guys that we haven't talked about in the show very much, just because they're not at the forefront of conversations right now. I think TJ Yeldon is someone that I'm going to wind up with on a lot of benches. I want someone to tell me like a massive difference between someone like TJ Yeldon and Chris Thompson. And the reason I say that, like Yeldon last year, so he was the 3rd running back on the depth chart. They had Chris Ivory there. Yeldon saw 41 targets in 10 games. And even if you go back to 2016, TJ Yeldon was a big part of the receiving game. He lost some weight this offseason. He's looked better every NFL season that's gone on. I know they have Leonard Fournette there, but we also know that Leonard Fournette has some serious ankle injuries in his past that have caused him to miss time. This defense is elite. There's going to be enough for 2 running backs here too, actually. I believe that TJ Yeldon can give you RB4 flex type numbers most weeks in PPR formats. He's going undrafted in most leagues, and if something does happen to Leonard Fournette, TJ Yeldon is the clear-cut starter there, guys. Corey Grant would be in a timeshare with him, but Corey Grant would essentially walk into the TJ Yeldon role, where Yeldon would be the 3-down back on the team. So
he's a gimmick back. Yeah, it's Yeldon.
Yeah, I think Yeldon I think he's so undervalued in drafts, and I just don't get it.
I get that. There's just guys I like a lot more than Yeldon. Like I can name 5 backup running backs. I guess Fournette has a better chance of getting hurt than a lot of these guys.
But they're also not produced. But the backup running backs, the ones that you're going to talk about, and I understand what you're saying, they have more upside. I get it, but they don't have production on your bench. Like Sig, do you see where I'm coming from here?
Yeah, that's true.
Well, look, not to get into this, although anytime we're talking about late round picks, we're always talking about backup running backs. And I usually look at 4 factors when I'm rating backup running backs. The quality of the situation, the track record, likelihood that the starter is going to go down, the talent of the backup, and the clarity that they are indeed the backup.
Great list.
So, and then you can adjust those factors depending on, sometimes just, Nick Chubb is just so overwhelmingly talented that he's going to go ahead of any other backup running back probably. Or Rashad Penny, the first round pick. That being said, the other metric that you would look at here, and I'll just take the baton and toss mine in next to keep things moving, because I think this is a great topic for late round picks. Backup running backs should be among your late round picks, and I think especially when we get into week 10, 11, 12 of the regular season, they should really dominate your bench because they're lottery tickets at that point. And Yeldon, there's a massive argument for Yeldon strictly on his talent and the quality of the situation. However, the other variable here is how long are your benches? If your benches are not very long, then someone like Yeldon, who you're waiting for the Leonard Fournette injury, and he does have some standalone value. I would compare him to, say,
Gio Bernard.
Well, yeah, and Bernard hopefully is going earlier too, because he's closer to, I think, Duke Johnson or Tariq Cohen than Yeldon, or say Buck Allen. And I would put Yeldon and Allen in a similar situation where I think Yeldon's the better back. Yeldon's in the better situation. I think Allen may get more touches on a week-to-week basis. Now, all that aside, I'll toss in another name out there. So on the short bench side of things, maybe if you want someone who just you don't necessarily want to hold for 6, 8, 10 weeks to see what happens, but just to see what happens for week 1, I'll go ahead and cheat and double up. Shallow James Conner. Just because he looked fantastic. He looked like Jordan Howard, basically. And Le'Veon Bell's coming off of layoff. He could always get hurt in week 1. So you may know at the end of week 1 that you have someone ready to start week 2. And at the deep, deep end, but in a similar idea, is Wayne Gallman for the Giants.
Interesting.
He totally blew Jonathan Stewart away. Not that hard.
Yep.
But Saquon Barkley's coming in with a hamstring injury. And what we hope he gets full practices in next week, because that I think will show that the hamstring is probably in the past. But if we see limited practices, or even if we don't, there's always a chance that when he does open up Barkley in week 1, he's going to feel that hamstring grab, and it's going to be Wayne Gallman against Jacksonville. And we know that could be something to showcase Gallman's receiving ability. So these are players where if you're looking strictly at that lens of backups most likely to be in a role because the starters get injured in week 1, Gallman and Conner.
I love Conner. That was actually the number 1 name I was going to say, and the reason why is because it's perfectly okay. I'm glad that you said him because it makes me feel better about taking him in the 13th round. I've been taking him later in drafts, but I don't want to risk someone else getting ahead of me, because who's to say Le'Veon Bell's not going to sit out 2-3 weeks? I mean, he played this game before, and they didn't give him any more money. They didn't do anything. So he's got to do something different. I think that he might, with James Harrison coming out and saying, dude, you got to actually follow through and sit out. If you don't do that, you're not getting your money. And I think that he actually does it this year. And you know what I think happens? I think James Conner goes in there and he's almost as good as Le'Veon Bell, just like D'Angelo Williams does, and Bell doesn't get his money anyway. So I think this could be a multiple week situation where we get an RB1 to start the season. And if Bell was to go down, oh boy, James Conner is the steal of the draft.
Wasn't there news that Bell's returning on Monday, on Labor Day?
Yeah. But it's still, until it actually happens, I think that, look, it just adds another little droplet to the idea of there's paths. I call them paths to value. That's another path to value for Connor until we know Bell's in the building.
There was also news that report was false. Like, there has not been a decision made. That has just been an assumption that, he'll be back on Labor Day.
I don't know. I still.
It's probably going to happen, but there's a chance we've got an RB1 here to start.
Well, Connor's like one of the best handcuffs you could have. Like, if you really want to handcuff Le'Veon Bell, like if you take Le'Veon with the number 2 overall pick or number 3, wherever you get him, it's really not a bad thing to just grab Connor, because like it's just, you're guaranteeing yourself that production. Like, one of them is going to be the starter. So I have no issue with that.
Or if Le'Veon Bell's not even your running back, like say you just have crummy running backs, I still want James Conner.
I think it just goes to a backup. I mean, we're going to find out more on Monday, but if you're drafting this weekend, obviously you have to make that decision. So I just think it's more important that you grab Connor if you do have Bell, but if you don't, I wouldn't reach for him.
I'd rather have him than some turd like C.J. Anderson or Isaiah Crowell or something.
I wouldn't draft Isaiah Crowell, so there's a difference.
I mean, a lot of people would, though. That's why we're telling them not to.
Oh, man. Bobby, who's your late round guy?
I'll get to mine in just a second. First, I want to tell them about NFL Game Pass that we've got going on right now. So the preseason's over, and you could watch the preseason games live. I'm still going back and watching a bunch of the condensed games. You know, you can watch the condensed games in 10 minutes for preseason. In the regular season, we'll get them for 20 minutes. On Mondays, I'm just going to watch football all day, go back and watch all the plays. And that's what you can do with NFL Game Pass. They've got all kinds of cool tools. You can search for a waiver wire guy. Like, say Philip Dorsett goes out there and he catches 6 passes for 110 yards and a touchdown in week 1. You can go back and watch and see, like, did he actually look good, or was it just a lapse in the defense? You can look up Philip Dorsett. It's a really easy tool to use. Tags, NFL Game Pass just has awesome stuff, don't they?
No, it really does. When you find the player search feature, it's like the best thing ever, because it's like, if you want to, I went back and watched a lot of Devontae Parker from last year, and the people that are telling me he's not a good receiver, I really don't believe that. I think that he's a young kid, and I think he's made mistakes for sure, but I don't think he's a bad football player. And I learned that by going back and watching the tape and not just looking at numbers. So it's one of those things where if you want to trust your eyes a little bit more, you can go back and search for any player, and it'll pop up when they were targeted, all those things.
Yeah, plus they've got all 22, which is where you can see it the way that the coaches see the game and break down the film. And man, it is such a beautiful thing, and it just gives you a leg up on the fantasy competition. And we've got a cool thing for you. They're giving you a 7-day free trial to NFL Game Pass, and you can sign up for that now at NFL.com/fantasypros. Again, that's NFL.com/fantasypros for a 7-day free trial of NFL Game Pass. Game on. Okay, so my first one was James Conner. I'm going to go wide receiver here before Tags steals my guy.
Uh-oh.
We all know it's Geronimo Allison, right? Everyone knew Tags and I were going to say Geronimo Allison. He looked really good last night, but here's the thing. Why was he playing last night, Tags?
I just think that's just like bodies. I don't think that...
I hope, man.
I hope so too. But the thing is with Geronimo Allison, I've actually went back and watched his. Speaking of Game Pass, I went back and watched. And Geronimo Allison is not the greatest separator or anything like that. I don't think Geronimo Allison is like the greatest talent.
He's better than James Jones, who had 14 touchdowns.
But he does a lot of things right. You know what I mean? He can read his zone coverage. He catches the ball with his hands. He's where Aaron Rodgers wants him. He's dependable once the ball gets to him. So there's things to like about his game. And the reason we've liked him all along is because he's going to be the number 2 or number 3 option for Aaron Rodgers.
And when you trade Randall Cobb.
Yeah, well, we don't know about the Cobb thing. Like we don't even need to get into that again. But he's a starting wide receiver for Aaron Rodgers. He should be drafted. And if he doesn't do anything over the first couple of weeks, you can cut bait. All you're using is like a 14th, 15th round pick on him. So I love Geronimo Allison.
Not me, man. I'm getting him at the 12th. I'm not waiting for that. Forget that. I've been sniped on Geronimo Allison too many times. I'm going and getting him.
There you go. Sig, what's your take on Allison?
Anybody who Aaron Rodgers is throwing the ball to is worth your attention.
Yes.
And he definitely has outdistanced himself from the rookies. Jake Kumaro, who maybe was in the mix to have a role in this offense, may or may not make the team after, I think he hurt himself jumping in to the end zone, landing on his shoulder.
Oh, wow. No way.
After like a 78-yard touchdown. Don't quote me on that. But so I think that absolutely makes sense. You bring in the Randall Cobb nugget, and that's something else to think about. So this is one of those situations where there's so many late round wide receivers to take. And this is also something you're stocking your waiver wire watch list with, depending on who gets drafted and who doesn't. But the quarterback throwing the ball to them can be a great tiebreaker whenever you're in between 3 or 4 different guys.
Yeah, I'd rather have Aaron Rodgers number 2 or 3 target than Blake Bortles number one.
Any Buffalo Bill.
I love Keelan Cole. And the situation's a lot better now, but I'm still taking Geronimo Allison over him. I've got Allison over guys like him, Jordy Nelson, Calvin Ridley, even Alshon.
Alshon, they're not putting him on PUP. That's actually news that came out yesterday that we should have probably mentioned.
They didn't put Andrew Luck on PUP either, man.
Well, that was a different situation. I think that they know what's going on. I mean, Alshon being a wide receiver compared to Luck as a quarterback, I think it's both shoulder surgeries, but I think Alshon, they're expecting him to be back by week 3. I'm expecting worst case scenario week 4. But yeah, he's definitely
so give me 600 receiving yards then.
That's basically what you're looking at. So Bobby's making some good points here, man. I can't argue with Alshon, but I wouldn't take Geronimo Allison over Alshon Jeffrey.
Okay. Oh, where do you have Geronimo Allison? Is he a top 45, 50 receiver for you, Tags? And what about you, Sig?
I don't have him in my top 45. I have him right around like that wide receiver 55 range. Like he's a bench guy for me for sure.
So you really don't care about Geronimo Allison at all. I'm all alone here.
Well, I have him 62nd. So I have Geronimo Allison. I have him in a tier with guys like we mentioned Chris Godwin, DJ, some of the rookies, James Washington, DJ Moore, Christian Kirk, D.D. Westbrook, Traquan Smith. Players that I'm not going to plug into my lineup week 1, but I want to have on my roster to see how things go early and know that there are lots of scenarios where I might be happy I have them in a few weeks.
I'm actually playing Geronimo Allison in a couple leagues week 1. I got him in my flex, and I feel all right about it. I mean, Randall Cobb, I don't know if he's playing week 1. He's got the injury that he's still recovering from, hasn't got many reps. And by the way, I have Chris Godwin in that tier too, just a lot higher than you guys do. So, Tags, why don't we move on to your second one here?
All right, so I'm going to mention him before somebody else does, and I've talked about him on the show before, but I'm curious to get Sig's take on him because we haven't talked to him about Anthony Miller. But Anthony Miller is the reason that I've actually lowered Allen Robinson down my draft boards because I think Anthony Miller deserves attention, and I think he might get off to a hot start. They're playing the Packers in week 1. And the Packers, as we know, they have a really young cornerback talent room. And, I mean, they drafted a couple of rookies, and they're supposed to be good, which it's good that they address the position. But they're also down a couple linebackers, had to trade for one yesterday with the Colts. I just don't know over the middle of the field they have the talent to hang with someone like Anthony Miller, even in his first NFL game. So where are you at on Anthony Miller, and where would you reach for him in drafts?
Oh, I love Anthony Miller. I mean, I might not take him until the 13th or 14th round because I don't think I'll have to. In an experts league where wide receivers were flying off the board, I think I might take him in the 10th or 11th round. And I loved Anthony Miller's game at Memphis, and I see him as an inside-outside guy a la Antonio Brown, Emmanuel Sanders type of talent. I think he's going to lock down the slot duties, and he had a scene-stealing camp for the Bears. It doesn't, if somebody shines in their rookie camp, it doesn't mean they're going to be a star. But often when we look back and say, how did we know that maybe he was going to be a star right away? He shined in camp. And Miller has checked that box. And also, looking back at the Rams last year, it was rookie Cooper Kupp in the slot, who was the most valuable receiver. It really feels to me like you put Allen Robinson out there, you cancel out Darius Slay, you cancel out Xavier Rhodes, you let Mitchell Trubisky, Matt Nagy, you let the play calling line up so that Anthony Miller's going to have that great matchup every week, and absolutely he's at or near the top of the list.
You guys are making good points. Like, I've got Miller low. I like Miller, but I've got him lower than some of these guys like Allison and Cole. But you look at Cooper Kupp last year, and he was competing against Sammy Watkins, Robert Woods, Todd Gurley for targets, and he was still the best rookie wide receiver. I think Anthony Miller's a better version of Cooper Kupp. I don't know if he'll do as much in the red zone, but you got to like Anthony Miller. I don't have a problem with this one at all.
Yeah, for sure. And I took him. I did a Chicago Media League draft 2 days ago, and I took Anthony Miller in the 10th round. So know your league, and like if your league isn't really plugged in, if you're just like in a regular like a work league where guys don't know what they're doing, you can wait on Miller a little bit longer. But I don't think I'd wait past like the 12th round because I think at that point he's starting to move up certain lists where if they print off one of these cheat sheets and they see him on a list, they might just be like, oh, he looks fine. You know what I mean? Where it's just like understand who you're drafting with and know when you have to reach to get him.
Dude, we got breaking news.
Oh.
Khalil Mack traded to the Packers.
The Packers did it.
I'm just messing. I'm messing with you, Tags. Tags is a Bears fan, and I had this planned. I knew he was going to bring up Anthony Miller. I just wanted to pull it a string.
You are the absolute worst.
Sorry, Sig. Sorry, Tags.
They have the extra pick now. With the trade.
Yes.
So I keep waiting.
I'm sorry, guys. The funny thing is, it might happen by the time this is released. So.
Yeah, right. One day, Bobby, when you least expect it, I'll get you back.
I don't want to see cute Khalil Mack in a Packers uniform. Please, no.
I should have let it go for a couple more minutes before I said that it wasn't true, but I felt really bad.
Adam Snefter.
That's who Bobby is. Bobby's the real life version of that.
All right, Sig, who's your number 2 guy?
Well, I'm going to go a little deeper because there are names, the late round wide receiver list. I mean, there's so many rookies that have been good. John Ross, I think people have caught up. Guys like John Ross and John Brown are really at the top of my personal list, but I think people have caught up on them, so I'm going to go a little bit deeper. I know when you were...
Those are both good names, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, and these are names I think now that, for the most part, like even casual fantasy players, with John Ross's long touchdown, with all the good news about John Brown, and we love Smokey. We in Smokey we trust. We want to see him stay on the field. But I'm going to go deeper and talk about Cordarrelle Patterson. And I know earlier in as you were telling, if you're a real football fan, fantasy football fan, you've got to have Game Pass. Philip Dorsett might be the smarter money. I mean, look, the Patriots in general, the Patriots are a good place to take late round shots.
Yep.
It just they magnify the fantasy value of any competent player. And with Julian Edelman out, that's going to open up opportunity for the first 4 weeks. First game against Houston, that could be a shootout. Philip Dorsett might be the smarter pick. He looked good in the last preseason game, caught a 4th down pass, looked good after the catch. But Cordarrelle Patterson, I was talking about this with my colleague Matt Waldman on our show last night. Waldman, who evaluates players, like he's spent more time watching players in a year than most of us spend in our life, said, and I agree with him, that Cordarrelle Patterson is one of the most dangerous open field runners he's ever evaluated. Like Cordarrelle Patterson with the ball in his hands is fantastic. Go back before Norv Turner ruined everything in Minnesota and see what Patterson did as a rookie. Just on simple plays like a sweep, he could take it for a touchdown. And Bill Belichick, as much as he's forward-looking and innovative, I think also embraces simple truths on the football field. And the simple truth is, you have someone like Cordarrelle Patterson, you figure out a way to get the ball in his hands. And he's still in his prime. He's still fast. He's still strong. He's still elusive. I believe that we didn't see all of the playbook that they have for Cordarrelle Patterson. And if there's somebody who can unlock Patterson in a situation, it could be this one. So I like having Patterson on my roster. So I'll also say in the background, I've touched on this a couple of times, I like early reveal players in those last few bench spots, as opposed to a player, unless it's a league where there's 16 teams, or long benches where you can hold on to 2 or 3 players for a long time and still cycle through 2 or 3 other spots. Because those first 2 or 3 waiver wire runs can be hugely important in determining the power balance in your league. So with Patterson, you watch him week 1 against Houston, pretty weak secondary. We're going to see what we've got, and otherwise we can move on.
Tegs, what do you think about Patterson, man? I know you brought him up maybe a week or 2 ago, just saying, like, this is the kind of guy that the Patriots will turn into a monster. I could see it.
No, I mean, we talked about him on the show the other day, as you mentioned, and Patterson is someone that people just forget how talented he was. He's a former first-round pick, and when he came out of school, people compared him with the ball in his hands to Dez Bryant. And, like, when he was with the Vikings, he made some splash plays. Like, he was the guy where it's like people, I want to say that he was a top 24 wide receiver pick in his second year in the league, and it just never panned out. But he played for a pretty bad team. So going to the Patriots, they're known to revive some people's careers. I mean, look what they did for Randy Moss. Look what they did for Deion Lewis. It's like Cordarrelle Patterson, the reason I like him, and you're going to find out what you have in week 1. The reason I say that is because they're playing the Texans. I started on the primer, and the Texans secondary is somewhat weak, but their front 7 should bring the pressure. So Brady's going to have to get the ball out. His offensive line is struggling. Obviously, he has 2 new starting tackles. His starting guard just went down for the year. So they're going to have to get the ball out quick. Cordarrelle Patterson's the type of player you can get on screen passes. You can move him out of the backfield and kind of use him in unique ways. Whereas guys like Philip Dorsett, it's going to take him a while to get open down the field. Like, he's the type of guy to stretch a field. Hogan's kind of like a utility guy. So I think that Patterson, you might see him pop in week 1, and he might be one of the most popular waiver wire ads after that week. So if you want to be proactive, I'm with Sig on this one. I actually had Patterson down as one of the players I wanted to mention in the show.
Interesting. Yeah, I wasn't thinking about sharing Patterson. I mean, I don't mind getting shares of Dorsett. I'm probably not going to play him. I don't think he really has upside. I think Patterson does have upside. In much deeper leagues, it makes sense. He named some guys that I like more, John Ross, John Brown. And a lot of people are in more shallow leagues, but if you're in a deeper league, I think Patterson is a good target for late, because a lot of those guys, Brandon Marshall, Terrell Pryor, yeah, they've got some upside, but I don't think as much as Patterson.
Yeah, no, I mean, well, that's the thing is just like Patterson playing. I mean, Brady's just lacking options. When you think about all the players that have gone through there this year, like, I mean, how many players have left there? Kenny Britt, they cut Malcolm Mitchell, Jordan Matthews, Eric Decker, Julian Edelman suspended. It's like the targets have to go somewhere, guys. And as much as I like Chris Hogan, he can't get all of them.
Yeah. Okay, guys, I'm going to get to my second in just a minute. First, I want to talk about another one of the sponsors of today's show, Mack Weldon. And I was always under the impression that underwear was like the same. It just all had to be uncomfortable, and we just had to deal with it, right? Then I got my Mack Weldons with the premium fabric, smart design. I quickly realized it doesn't have to be that way, and underwear is not all that they have. They've got the most comfortable socks, shirts, undershirts, hoodies, sweatpants that you will ever wear. I'm not kidding. I'm not saying this because they told me to say it. I'm saying it because I've got Mack Weldon a jacket from them, and I've got 5-6 of their shirts, and they're so comfortable. I wear them almost every single day at work. Tags, you got some of these too. What do you think about them, man?
Oh, I can vouch for the socks. You said it. I play golf in like the off season. That's my biggest hobby. And the socks actually have this little tab in the back that comes up a little higher than most do. And it's like this little thing about their socks that makes them different, where it's like my golf cleats will always dig into the back of my heel. But when I bought those and I put them on, oh, dude, like game changer.
Yeah. I mean, they want you comfortable. So here's what they have for you. If you don't like your first pair, just keep it. They'll refund you, no questions asked, but you're going to like it. Trust me, you are absolutely going to like it. They look really good, too. You can wear them out and look great. You can wear them at home and be comfortable. It is the perfect fit. And here's the offer that they're giving you guys. If you want 20% off your first order, visit MackWeldon.com and enter the promo code FantasyPros. All one word at checkout. You'll get 20% off your first order. And I'm telling you guys, it is absolutely worth it because this stuff is super comfortable. Okay, my number 2 name, I already mentioned Keelan Cole and Chris Godwin. We've talked about them a ton on the show. I love both those guys. Let's go to another running back, though. Jordan Wilkins. I don't know if Marlon Mack's going to be the starter, but they held Jordan Wilkins out last night. And that is good news because that means he's going to play a big role in the offense. We know Mack's not exactly good to go right now. Wilkins can be a 3-down back in Andrew Luck's offense that could put up 450 points. If he plays well from the get-go, yeah, Mack's going to be involved, but I think this could be Jordan Wilkins' offense. Well, obviously Andrew Luck's offense, but Jordan Wilkins' backfield. He could have a huge season. Man, I wouldn't be surprised if he ended up the number 2 fantasy rookie running back.
What's your take on Wilkins, Sig, and this entire Colts backfield, I should say?
Yeah, well, Christian Michael got a lot of run in the 4th preseason game, which usually isn't a good sign. So I do think that Wilkins is going to get some run in the first game. Now it is against the Bengals. Andrew Luck is going to be a little rusty, and we may see, it's funny, fast forward to week 3, week 4, we may be talking about Robert Turbin. Not necessarily for any fault of Wilkins, but just because I don't see this as a strong running team. But absolutely Wilkins should be on that 12th, 13th round or later list, and we'll see usage. Even Nyheim Hines. I'm not saying to take Nyheim Hines, but let's not forget about him after a rough preseason because they didn't play him in the 4th preseason game, and we don't know how Marlon Mack's health. So Mack could also aggravate that hamstring when he tries to come back. There a lot of variables in this backfield, which means because, again, Andrew Luck offense, Wilkins is the best share to own right now.
All right, let's give one more name each. Tags, who's your last guy?
My last one that I would mention, I was going to go with John Ross, but I guess I'll just throw Ryan Grant's name out there again, just because if Andrew Luck is struggling with throwing the deep ball, you kind of look to other options in the offense. And if they run it similar to Peterson's offense, then Ryan Grant would be the Alshon Jeffrey of their offense. So if that's the case, then, I mean, getting him as a final round pick, it's not the worst thing. And again, you're going to find out what you have in a lot of these guys in the first week of the season. That's who you should be taking with your first pick or with your final picks, is just like looking at these guys where you know that you can cut bait if they're not going to be anything. While everybody talks about Andrew Luck and the fact that they know what's going on with him, I don't think anybody really knows. And I think we're going to see it in week 1, obviously. The Bengals are going to be missing Vontaze Burfict up the middle. So I wonder if the Colts are going to try and run the ball more than they typically would. But I'm curious to see Luck and if he looks competent. If he looks solid, I think Ryan Grant's going to be a steal in one of the last rounds.
Remember last year when Luck was gone and everyone realized T.Y. Hilton is just a mediocre wide receiver?
I don't think he's mediocre.
Who else is a mediocre wide receiver? It's Ryan Grant. Who's to say Ryan Grant isn't going to be a monster?
I don't think T.Y. Hilton's mediocre. I just don't think that he's I don't think he's an alpha dog that should be getting 140 targets. But
that's what I'm saying, is he got all those targets. Last year he was the wide receiver 24. He's been a top 20 wide receiver in fantasy 2 of his first 6 seasons. Sig, what do you think about Ryan Grant?
Competent. We'll
Yeah.
run the play as it's drawn up, and it doesn't have any major deficiencies in his game, doesn't have any major strengths to add value to his routes or targets. But if Andrew Luck's going to throw the ball 600 times, we can give T.Y. Hilton 150 targets. We can give each tight end. We can give the tight ends 175 targets. We can give the running backs 125 targets, and there's still 150 targets left over for the receivers.
Wow.
And that's Ryan Grant. It's the leader of that group. So absolutely, the Colts offense in general is a good place to look for late round picks.
It's kind of like Geronimo Allison, except we know he's starting, and his quarterback isn't quite as good as Aaron Rodgers. Still really good, but not as good as Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I'm totally expecting Sig to take the last guy that I wanted to mention in the show. I had 4, but I want to hear who Sig is going to mention for his last guy.
Well, and again, there's lots of names that I think are more low-hanging fruit. So I don't want to necessarily. I think there's a lot of great work, including by y'all, casting attention to these names. So I'll use this opportunity to get on the soapbox and talk about Alfred Morris.
Ooh,
and yeah. Look, if it was the regular season and we were doing a waiver wire show, and Matt Breida was banged up, and Jerick McKinnon was banged up, and Alfred Morris was just signed by Kyle Shanahan, then we'd say, well, I'm interested. So I think as a late round pick, think of your late round picks as the first waiver wire run. And I see Alfred Morris as somebody, we don't know how Breida is going to respond with the shoulder. We don't know how McKinnon's calf is going to respond. It is Minnesota week 1. So perhaps it doesn't matter because the 49ers are going to have 20 carries for 60 yards. Alfred Morris still looked fine last year for Dallas. Alfred Morris isn't used up. He's not washed up. He might be the best running back as it stands in the Kyle Shanahan outside zone running game. I know Evan Silva said this, and I think that he's right, that Alfred Morris might be the best running back out of those 3. So he could turn it into a 3-way committee. He could even become a lead back in terms of early downs for them. We know how we expect this offense to be much more productive this year with Jimmy Garoppolo. Alfred Morris can still play. And this is one of those situations, too, kind of like Adrian Peterson, where teams aren't going to sign a veteran unless they can give him assurances on a workload or a role.
Yeah, it's definitely not out of the question. You watch him play, and he looks perfect in that offense, right?
Oh, he knew it. And you know what's funny is that I actually got so much crap on Twitter. When Alfred Morris signed with them, I said, don't be surprised if he's starting week 1. And so many people gave me crap saying that he's a camp body, he's not good, there's no way that they're going to pay McKinnon that money and they're going to do this. And it was a joke. I got so much flack for it when I said that when it happened, because Alfred Morris did play extremely well in Kyle Shanahan's offense. So I don't know.
1,600 yards well. Okay, I'll give my my last name here. I'm going to go with another backup running back just because I can't possibly let you guys go into the weekend without realizing just how good John Kelly is. I mean, yeah, he's the backup to Todd Gurley. It's a great offense to be in, like Sig talked about. What's the situation? It's a great situation in Los Angeles. What is, would he definitely be the backup? Yeah, he would definitely be the backup. If Todd Gurley was to go down, John Kelly would be a top 12 guy almost every single week. He is not only in those good situations and everything like that, but he's extremely talented. You watch him run, this could be a superstar. We've had a lot of backup running backs become superstars. John Kelly's one of them.
He reminds me of Duke Johnson, but I think he's I think he's a fantastic receiver. So I actually like this a lot. If I'm not mistaken, Sig, you and I talked about John Kelly, and I think you're a fan too, right?
Yeah, this is one of those situations where you just are waiting for Todd Gurley to go down for Kelly to have value, but he is a tremendous running back. I saw Duke Johnson when I was watching him at Tennessee, but there may be even more there than that. And for dynasty leagues, you might have to wait a while to reap some value there. But I think if Gurley goes down, if we'd have some sort of debate about Malcolm Brown versus John Kelly, as soon as people watch them both play in the regular season, the debate would be over.
Brown's fine. I think Brown's a sufficient backup running back,
yeah.
But John Kelly is just a stud.
Yeah.
Okay, guys, let's move on to the next segment. And what we're going to do here is we're going to look at QB1 streamers. In my mind, there's really only 2 to consider. I mean, I guess if you're in a 2-quarterback league, and we should probably mention that because there's enough of them, then there's other guys we should be talking about.
But there's no streamers in those, though, because every starting quarterback
You're right.
is
That's a good point. Yeah, so let's not even mention it. My 2 streamers, in order, Dak Prescott, Andy Dalton. If you have somebody else, well, I guess those 2 guys must be owned or you're doing it wrong.
Andy Dalton is likely available in every league, and he should be started over someone I would start Dalton over Kirk Cousins in week 1.
Me too. I've got him over Matt Ryan, Andrew Luck, Phillip Rivers. I've got Andy Dalton in my top 12 against Indianapolis, who's dreadful. Dak Prescott at Carolina. I think a lot of people are going to be surprised just how bad Carolina's secondary is this year. Plus, I love Dak Prescott, so.
I mean, Travis Frederick's not going to play that game.
They just traded for another offensive lineman.
Yeah, I saw that from the Chiefs. But, I mean, he's not going to start week one. He just traded there. So I'm worried about Prescott's offensive line. I'd rather see it in action, see how he does.
Dalton's got to be number one playing Indianapolis, and how sharp the Cincy passing game looked. You just watch the injuries, I think Cordy Glenn. Just watch that. But I don't think Indy's going to threaten them. So if you have to go deeper and someone was smart and got Andy Dalton, I would say Blake Bortles against the Giants.
He has been so bad, way worse than I've ever seen.
You're right. He's been bad. He was bad in the preseason last year too. I just think that with the Giants, there's some places you can pick on that team.
You're right.
And this could actually become a high scoring game. We'll see. And Tyrod Taylor against the Steelers. And
I
love my Steelers, but there are some deficiencies in that defense.
That's a good call on Tyrod. I was not even thinking about him. Yeah. I mean, I was thinking perhaps Alex Smith against Arizona, just because I like Alex Smith. Arizona's a mediocre pass defense, but yeah, I think I'd rather have Tyrod face Pittsburgh. Tags, anyone else on your radar? Would you maybe think about Joe Flacco against Buffalo? Or, I mean, it's ugly.
So the only other player that I consider this first week that is probably available on your waiver wire is Mitch Trubisky, playing at Green Bay. It's on the road. It's a divisional game. It's not the greatest. Again, Dalton is probably available. He's the one I would go with. But if you need a backup plan, like if somebody else grabbed Dalton already, I think Trubisky at Green Bay. It's the first time that the league is going to see Matt Nagy's offense in Chicago. Obviously, they have a ton of pass catchers. You know, when everybody's trying to figure out who is it? Is it going to be Allen Robinson, Anthony Miller, Tariq Cohen, Taylor Gabriel, Trey Burton? When you add all that stuff up, it's like, okay, who's the guy dishing out these passes? And he's probably going to have a relatively high floor because Green Bay is going to score some points.
Guys, let's talk about kickers. And it just seems kind of worthless, but it really is not. If you're doing this the right way, you're going to add 2 or 3 points per week on average, and that's essentially going to win you a game or maybe 2 during the regular season. That could be the difference between making the playoffs, not making the playoffs. No, I think kickers shouldn't be in a league. With that said, there is some strategy to be used here. What do you look for when you're drafting a kicker, or is it just who has the best week 1 matchup because you're going to stream anyway? We'll go to you first, Sig.
And you can stream kickers now, and I think what we're looking for is, in a nutshell, the team being favored. That's first. You want a kicker for a winning team.
Yep.
As we get deeper in the season, you might be looking at weather. Indoor kickers, maybe a little better. You want to be watching trends for the offense. An offense actually that is productive, kind of like Atlanta last year. Productive, moving down the field, but stalling out a lot. Kansas City was doing this. So maybe you look at Dustin Hopkins if you think Alex Smith's going to be able to move Washington's offense against Arizona, but not exactly punch it in for touchdown after touchdown. So I think Dustin Hopkins is a good name. Baltimore and Buffalo, Dustin Tucker's usually drafted pretty high, so I don't know if you're going to get him, but I could see Buffalo bend but not breaking a lot in that game. Just high scoring games. Maybe Houston's. I know Kaimi Fairbairn has been hurt, so you want to make sure that he's good to go for week 1. And that's another thing I would add is you don't even trifle with a kicker who has anything injury related in the background. Matt Prater against the Jets in week 1.
That's my guy.
Is a good one. You should be able to, just with your regular football acumen, look over the list of kickers in a week and see at least 2 or 3 guys on the waiver wire that you feel good about.
I'm drafting Matt Prater pretty much everywhere, and the reason why is I like to get guys who can actually make long field goals and get plenty of chances to make them because you get extra points for those. Matt Prater is one of the best long field goal kickers in the league. He was 30 for 35 last year, but 3 of those misses were from 55 yards out. He's made some really, really long field goals. He's going to get plenty of chances, and like you said, it's a good week 1 match. So that's what I'm going for. Obviously, there will be times where you can't get him because he's probably the number 5, 7 kicker off the board or something like that. But that's my preference. Tags, what do you look for, man?
Yeah, I mean, like Justin Tucker is probably going to be underrated to start the season. Like he was obviously the kicker everybody wanted. I think it was before last year, but with the added options that the Ravens offense have kind of put behind them this year, the fact that they're going to be a bit more high scoring, their offensive line is a bit healthier. They've added pass catchers to that offense, so I expect them to march down the field a bit more. So I think Justin Tucker is going to be fantastic to start the year. Obviously, the later in the year you get, that's when I start to stream. I think Dan Bailey is someone that actually you can probably lean on all season. Because again, the Dallas offense is going to be good enough to move the ball, but I don't think they're going to necessarily be a high scoring offense, which is where I'm at with Bailey. Like he's another guy. He's a young guy who can kick long field goals. He plays indoors. Will Lutz, for the Saints, we know they're going to score points. If you pair him, I don't know how I feel about it. I never particularly aim for it, but I have no issue if you want to have Drew Brees and Lutz on your team, where it's like if the Saints are scoring, you're scoring. If Brees is having a great game, Lutz isn't, but it's vice versa because the Saints are going to score points. So I typically if I'm drafting one of the first kickers, it's going to be Tucker, Gostkowski for sure. But if I'm going to wait,
well, you're not drafting one until the last round, so
15th round.
In a lot of leagues, those guys aren't going to be there because people are picking him in the 12th and 14th round.
Well, the defenses have been going earlier, but I've actually gotten Tucker. I play in 2 leagues with kickers, so I did get Tucker in the 15th round of a draft the other day. So it was the round before the last. Defenses seem to be going before kickers. People are waiting until the last 2 rounds to get kickers. Like that just seems like a standard now. Whereas defenses, you'll sometimes see go in the 12th, 13th round. So kickers, I think you're a little bit more flexible there. But if they do go early, landing Lutz or Dan Bailey, I'm good with those guys.
Let me ask you this question, okay? Say you're in a league where you have to pay for each transaction. Do you still stream kickers? Is there enough value on the waiver wire, or do you just ride one of these big offenses like New Orleans with Will Lutz or Chris Boswell with Pittsburgh, Jake Elliott with the Eagles, and just ride them until their bye week?
It depends on how much transactions are. If they're like $1, I don't care. But if they're like $5 transactions, yeah, I'll stick with one of the kickers.
Yeah,
I might actually
too.
spend a little more equity on one and a defense for that matter if I have to pay for every single transaction.
I mean, as much as we want to say kickers are unpredictable, that is the case, except with New England, because Gostkowski, he's been the number 1 fantasy kicker, 5 of the last 6 years?
Yeah, well, I mean, the Patriots are always a top 3 scoring offense.
Yeah, and that definitely helps. I mean, I'm not saying I'd pick him before the last round, but it would be nice to have a kicker like that or Greg Zuerlein. I don't know. I still feel dirty talking about kickers. It just seems wrong.
Well, let me step in. Listen. Let me step in because fantasy football. We like fantasy football because it's a simulation of football, and just like why do we hate fantasy football? Well, why do kickers matter? I mean, why do we hate kickers in fantasy football? It's unpredictable. Why it shouldn't matter? I shouldn't lose my matchup or win my matchup because of my kicker. But in the NFL, in the NFL, every week teams win or lose because of their kicker. So if it feels random, it probably feels random to the other 52 players who lost because their kicker missed a 40-yard field goal. And when Jake Elliott kicked that 63-yarder or whatever it was, then that week it sure felt like kickers mattered to the Eagles. So,
yeah,
I mean we don't like it, but we don't like it for the same reasons we don't like it in the game, which means I think it belongs.
Okay, let's move on to DST then. We've got about 10 minutes. I've got 2 stats of the day, so stick around for that because I actually really like these ones. DST, what is your general strategy, Tags?
I stream defenses. Like I never reach for a defense, and honestly, outside the Jags, like I would actually consider the Jags in the 13th round. If your league is full of guys that are just like, no, you wait till the last round, like we say.
I saw them go in the 5th round in a draft the other day. What?
Stupid. That's
come
stupid.
on, people.
No, come on, don't do that. But if you want to tell me in like the 13th round that you want to take the Jags, I'm fine with that. But outside of them, defenses are so unpredictable year over year. You can stream them and you're going to be better off, believe me. And one of the defenses that have been slipping in drafts recently, the Ravens defense last year was number 2. I was actually kind of shocked to see that they finished number 2 overall. They're playing Buffalo week 1. So even if you don't want to have the Ravens for the entire season, they're playing Josh Allen most likely as a starter in week 1. And that's fantastic. And they're at home too. So Josh Allen playing on the road in Baltimore against that defense, good luck. They're probably going to be my number 1 ranked defense this week over the Jags. So I'm streaming, so you should just look at the first week of matchups and play it that way, which is why I end up with the Saints on a lot of my teams, playing against Tampa Bay with Ryan Fitzpatrick, with no
and
starting
they get
left
Cleveland in week 2, the Giants in week 4. Yeah,
their starting left tackle Donovan Smith is going to miss the first couple weeks too. So the Saints defense is really good, and they might be really good the entire year because they actually have a really good unit.
That's why you picked them to win the Super Bowl. Yeah, they've got a ton of talent. I've got the Saints on most of my teams where I need a DST.
Yeah. Sig, is there any defense that you've been targeting in drafts that you feel like could be a sleeper, or are you just playing a streaming game?
Saints are good. Saints are one you pay. Maybe you have to get them as 8th, 9th, 10th defense off the board because of that matchup. Denver is another one that I might pay a little bit more for because Russell Wilson, and we'll see how his offense looks like on the road. Then they get the Raiders coming to Denver. Then they get Joe Flacco. We'll see. But then Patrick Mahomes coming his first trip to Denver, with the first stream offense, and then they go and face the Jets. So you could conceivably play the Broncos for the first 5 weeks, Bradley Chubb.
Yeah.
If you are waiting, we already talked about it in the kickers, Detroit Lions against Sam Darnold. Welcome to the NFL. And I think that is your best.
It's a good one.
If you wait for everybody else to take a defense and you're taking the last defense, the Lions are a good one.
Somebody that if you're in a deeper league and you just want to wait till the very end, and a lot of people aren't, Tennessee Titans. I don't mind them whatsoever. They've got plenty of talent. They've improved. They've got really good run defense. They've improved their secondary. And in week 1, they get Ryan Tannehill. In week 2, they get Houston. Now, Houston, Deshaun Watson, but he throws a lot of turnovers. He throws a lot of interceptions. He had 8 in 5 games last year. So I don't mind picking on Houston, and they've got a horrible offensive line, so they're going to give up plenty of sacks. I don't mind the Titans in the first 2 weeks. And there's actually something I like to do in fantasy football leagues that seems kind of strange because I don't draft a defense most of the time. If I have transactions, I'll draft a defense. But if I don't have transactions, I'm not even drafting a defense. And the reason why is you can just pick up some streamer. You can pick up the Titans. You can pick up the Lions the very last second. And until then, I've got James Conner. I've got John Kelly. And if Todd Gurley goes down, I got a top 10 running back. If he doesn't go down, so what? I drop him and I pick up the guy I would draft I pick up the defense I would draft anyway. But in the regular season, like starting week 4, I'll own 2 defenses on my team almost all of the time. And what I'm doing is I don't want to play the fab game and waste all my fab money on defenses, so I'm just going to add them for free the week before and get the best streamer for next week so I don't have to fight everybody. It's a free 3 points every week, and that's better than the VBD value you're going to get on your bench otherwise. I know it sounds weird, but it seems to work.
The carrying 2 defenses is a tough thing to do if you don't have deep rosters. Like some people, if they have five bench spots, it's really difficult to do that, especially when you get around bye weeks. So for me, like I said, I'm just playing the matchups. And by the way, some things you should pay attention to is if you spend a higher pick on a defense like the Houston Texans, like some people I've seen do, you have to look at their matchups to start the year, because if you spend equity on a draft pick like them, you're going to have to play them at New England in week 1. How do you feel about that? You don't want to carry 2 defenses. So the Texans, they're a team that I've had no draft shares of. They're not on any of my teams because I know that. So pay attention to that.
Yeah, I don't have the Texans as a top 12 defense for the first week. They've got plenty of talent, of course. But yeah, I'm not interested. Sig, let me ask you this. Is there any defense besides the Jags that you would take before the final round?
The Rams. Assuming they get Aaron Donald in.
Yeah.
And we just don't know how good they could be. And Ndamukong Suh and Aaron Donald, I don't know that we've ever seen a pair of defensive tackles like that. And you have Aqib Talib and Marcus Peters, and you have an excellent set of safeties, young safeties in LaMarcus Joyner and John Johnson, a great nickel corner, Nickel Roby-Coleman, and Wade Phillips orchestrating the whole thing. We know Wade Phillips can create lots of chaos and lots of turnovers. So I'm really excited to watch that Raiders game week 1. So I'd be fine playing the Rams in that game, assuming again you get Aaron Donald signed as they've been reporting.
The Rams are going to be nasty. I don't think it would surprise many people if they ended up in the Super Bowl. When I posted my pick, a lot of people were saying all Los Angeles. You got the Rams and the Chargers in the Super Bowl. I could see that happening.
Let's do it, yeah.
All right, guys, we do have stat of the day. We have a little bit of extra time, though, so I wanted to put you on the spot here, Sig, and ask you, who is the number 1 player that you have to get on your teams this fantasy season?
Rob Gronkowski.
Really? Okay.
Gronkowski. Yeah, well, I mean, just because it's easy, because I can take him in the second round in every draft. I've made this argument many times. Just everything is pointing towards career high targets for him. He says he feels great coming into this year. He's been taking care of himself. First 4 games, chance to get off to a really hot start. Tom Brady is smart. I mean, he's going to throw the ball where good things are going to happen. That's Rob Gronkowski.
So would you take him like 15th that high?
So just write him in pen in the second round. Now, and I'm not saying, if you take Julio Jones or AJ Green or Keenan Allen over him, or take Dalvin Cook over him, or you take Michael. I'm not saying it's the wrong pick if you don't take him in the second round, but for me, this has been easy.
I've been moving him up a lot. Tags made some really good points on him, and I remember the days where we were drafting him 6th, 7th, 8th overall in the first round, and nothing has changed except it's a better situation now. He still has the injury risk he did back then. Why are we drafting him 10 picks later?
Yeah. It's if he stays healthy for all 16 games, he's a league winner.
Is there anyone in like the middle rounds that you're dying to have?
Tyler Lockett. I think people
really
are up on him. Oh, just because of the Doug Baldwin situation. Because Lockett, so there's a set of players, wide receivers, who were hurt last year, and if people aren't factoring that into the potential for the bounce back, Jamison Crowder, Emmanuel Sanders would have said Randall Cobb, but he's already a little dinged. Tyler Lockett wasn't 100% last year. Wasn't near 100%. And he feels a lot better this year. They're going to have to pass a lot. I think Seattle is not going to be on the winning side of many games this year. And if Doug Baldwin isn't himself, I think that opens. And look, they just paid Tyler Lockett as if they expect him. So they gave him one of those, we're not paying you for what you've done. We're paying you for what we expect you to do. I like that.
Yeah, Russell Wilson seems to love Tyler Lockett as well. We'll see what happens. Apparently Brandon Marshall's starting, but I think Lockett has some potential for sure, kind of like Cordarrelle Patterson. Okay, guys, like I said, I have 2 stats of the day, and the first one is a player that is just, it's not sexy to draft him, but you might want to anyway because his ADP is just too low. It's Lamar Miller, and I've grown super fond of him. Just listen to this, okay? In the past 4 years, he is the only fantasy running back in football with at least 155 fantasy points each of his past 4 seasons. I shared this on Twitter yesterday, so you may have seen it. He's a top 20 running back every single year, all 4 of those years, and he has virtually no competition for touches for the first time in his career. Yeah, Foreman might come back after 6 weeks. Who knows how he's going to be after an Achilles injury. Lamar Miller's going to get 300-plus touches for the first time in his career, and he's always reliable.
I have no issue. I like Lamar Miller as an RB2. I think he's one of the safest ones you can do. And having Deshaun Watson as your quarterback, obviously that's going to help create some opportunities for him. So I would imagine Sig is probably with us in this one.
Yeah, absolutely. And I find myself gravitating him in the 4th round. I think he's the safe running back too. If you like to play it a little looser, maybe Kenyon Drake has a higher ceiling but a lower floor.
Love both those guys.
Yeah. So you get to the 4th round. This is where you're rolling the dice. But if you're not and you want a safe pick, and Lamar Miller slimmed down a little bit, looks more like the guy that was in Miami. It's going to be a very productive offense. He had 2 games with 2 touchdowns. When Watson was in last year. That's enough. That's enough for me.
I'd rather have both those guys, Miller and Kenyon Drake. In fact, I've got them at the 3-4 turn twice in the past week. I'd rather have them than LaShawn McCoy and Jerick McKinnon.
Agreed.
All right, here's the next one, Tags. You're going to love this. This one came from Packer Report on Twitter, and it is about Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers' career mark of 4.01 touchdowns per interception is equal to the Secretariat winning the 1973 Belmont by a whopping 31 lengths. Tom Brady is second with 3.05 touchdowns per interception. So Rodgers would have to throw 24 interceptions before his next touchdown pass, and he'd still be ahead of Brady. Holy cow.
Yeah, Aaron Rodgers is ridiculous. That's why he's a machine, and I've said it all along. That's a 25% better than anybody in NFL history. Like, I understand the game has changed, but Brady's been playing for a long stretch of that time. And to know that nobody is within a full touchdown per interception, like close to him, is just absolutely
amazing.
Ridiculous. Yeah.
By the way, Aaron Rodgers said Tom Brady's the GOAT. Did you know that?
Oh, I'm sure he would say that. Do you want him to come out and say, I'm the GOAT? Obviously.
I would. If I was Aaron Rodgers, I'd say it, man.
He's respecting. It's respect, man. You don't throw shade at an OG.
I don't really want to get into this too long, but Sig, who would you pick between these two?
Oh, it's Rodgers. It's Rodgers.
Yeah.
I mean, look, okay. So I'll put it this way. Tom Brady got the most out of the least. So if we're talking about amplifying, like taking what you have and then getting the absolute most out of it, that's Brady. Aaron Rodgers had a little more to work with coming into the league than Brady, but Rodgers, I don't think we've really been able to appreciate what Rodgers has done, in part because this has been a golden age of quarterback play, and we've gotten to watch Drew Brees, until a few years ago, Tony Romo, Phillip Rivers, Ben Roethlisberger, Peyton Manning until a few years ago, and so on. If we would take Aaron Rodgers and put him in an era where we didn't have all of these great quarterback careers overlapping, we would really understand how great he is.
But here's the thing that has really turned me towards Brady, because I've been on the Aaron Rodgers side, but Aaron Rodgers is making $33 million. Tom Brady's making $15 million. I mean, you could pay for Stephon Gilmore and Rob Gronkowski with the leftover money. Would you rather have Tom Brady, Stephon Gilmore, Rob Gronkowski, or Aaron Rodgers and two no-name rookies sitting at the end of your roster? I'd rather have Brady and the two studs.
Well, Brady's doing it at the end where it's like he knows it's like this is his last chance to grab a championship, so he has taken less money, and I know he's done that. I mean,
he's
Aaron
done
Rodgers,
it his whole career, man.
Aaron Rodgers was essentially underpaid up until this point, so
he still paid a lot more than Rodgers, like $8 million more per season.
But I promise you that Aaron Rodgers' deal in 2 years, people are going to say that it wasn't that bad because the money continues to go up for these quarterbacks.
Yeah, Blake Bortles is probably going to make like $40 million. I'm going to be pulling my hair out.
Stop.
I don't want it, man. I'm not like saying he deserves it or anything. I'm just, why? Why do they keep paying these guys like Joe Flacco so much? Yeah. All right, guys, that's all for today's show. Sig, as always, it was a pleasure. Thank you for coming on and talking with us.
I always look forward to a chance to hang out with you guys.
Oh, hey, Sig, by the way, we have breaking news at the end of the show. The Rams and Errol Donnan have just agreed to a contract extension worth more than $22 million per year.
Ooh.
Pay the man.
He's worth it. He is worth it. He's the best defensive player in football.
Pitt Panthers in the house.
I thought you were talking about Carolina at first. I didn't hear the Pitt part.
Yeah.
All right, guys, I also want to remind you that we've got the signed David Johnson jersey giveaway going on right now from pristineauction.com. Go to fantasypros.com/contest if you want to enter, and check out what Pristine Auction has for you. It's PRISTINE. Also, remember, you can get the NFL Game Pass 7-day free trial at NFL.com/fantasypros. And finally, Mack Weldon actually has comfortable underwear. They've got comfortable everything. Take a look at their site, Mack Weldon. And when you do, make sure to enter the promo code FantasyPros, all one word, for 20% off your first order. You guys are going to love it. I wear it almost every day. I'm not kidding. All right, guys. For Mike Tagliere, I'm Bobby Sylvester. Thanks for listening, and enjoy your football.
I just wanted you to watch me dissolve.